Hey, what's up everyone? It's Luke here, the Anarchist Crackpot, and today I'm going to be talking about something I've been meaning to discuss for a while, and that is President-elect Donald Trump. So over the course of the 2016 presidential election, I've seen a lot of people who consider themselves to be either part of the liberty movement or the truth community show their support for Donald Trump. And they seem to have this idea in their head of Donald Trump as this anti-establishment savior who descended down from the heavens in order to put a stop to the New World Order. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is simply not the truth. When we look at what Donald Trump has to say, we can go, well, maybe he's not as pro-liberty as some of us thought. Things like that he loves stop and frisk and that he thinks that it works really well. He wants to reauthorize the Patriot Act because he always errs on the side of security. Things like he wants to be the most pro-Israel candidate to ever exist. We might have to go to war with Iran to protect certain interests. And then he was always talking on the campaign trail about how we need to repeal Obamacare. Just get rid of it, only to soften his rhetoric a week after the election concluded. And now he's saying, well, I like parts of Obamacare and want to keep certain parts. It just needs a little bit of reform and I love government-provided health care. And then there's the big lie. We're gonna lock up Hillary Clinton, put her behind bars, which I would love to see nothing more. But then he goes on 60 Minutes and says, I don't want to put Hillary Clinton behind bars. I mean, she's done some bad things, but they're actually a fantastic and talented family who I might take counsel from. And then he says that Obama's a great guy and that he might take counsel from him as well. And then we can deduct, well, maybe Trump isn't as pro-liberty as some of us once thought. And then there's, of course, the claim that he's anti-establishment. He's a self-funded, self-made man and he doesn't have to take orders from anyone. Yet he's friends with people like billionaire Wall Street investment banker Jeffrey Epstein, you know, the one who had connections to the pedophile rings, and that he has been on the Lolita Express. Not only has he been on the Lolita Express, but Jeffrey Epstein has 14 different private numbers for Trump. He has had meetings with people like Henry Kissinger, and he has a great respect for Henry Kissinger and Richard Haas, you know, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations. And then you go, well, maybe he's not as anti-establishment as we once thought either. And what we need to see is that Donald Trump may have said some good things during his campaign, but he's not going to keep his promises. Even Henry Kissinger said, don't expect Donald Trump to keep his promises. He just ran a really smart campaign. So at what point do the people in the liberty movement, do the people in the truth movement go, maybe we got conned? Now some of you guys are probably going, well, you say that Donald Trump is part of the establishment, and sure he said he likes Henry Kissinger, or that he has a tremendous amount of respect for Richard Haas, but that's just playing politics. You gotta play the game. But here's how we know that he really does have a tremendous amount of respect for Henry Kissinger, the guy who prolonged the Vietnam War by 5 years, is responsible for the genocides in East Timor, Cambodia, and Bangladesh, and has just a litany of other crimes. And Richard Haas, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, is that he picked as his Deputy National Security Advisor K.T. McFarland, who is not only a former aide to Henry Kissinger, but is also a member of, you guessed it, the Council on Foreign Relations. And over K.T. McFarland's career, she has said a tremendous amount of horrible things. Everything from that regime change is needed in Iran, and that WikiLeaks is a terrorist organization and Julian Assange should be prosecuted as such, and that waterboarding, even if it is torture, should be used. And K.T. McFarland is not the only CFR member that Trump has appointed into his cabinet. He's also picked Elaine Chao as the Transportation Secretary. And this is the same Elaine Chao who was the Labor Secretary under George W. Bush, a former Bank of America executive, and, yes, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. And then there's Trump's pick for Secretary-Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, a Goldman Sachs executive who previously worked for the Soros Group. And then there is Trump's pick for Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, Senior Managing Director at Rothschild Inc. Yes, you heard that right, Rothschild Inc. And this investor is worth an estimated $2.9 billion. And as Kurt Nemo reported, Ross also worked as New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani's privatization advisor and was a member of the Wall Street secret society Kappa Beta Phi, made up of high-ranking financial executives. Robert Rubin, John Corzine, and John C. Whitehead, the former head of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Rockefeller Confidant, and Goldman Sachs chairman are also members. Ross is the grand swipe, or leader of the group. And it is possible that Trump will pick for Secretary of State David Petraeus, who is not only a member of the CFR and has attended Bilderberg meetings, but is the former director of the CIA. That is before he had to resign because he pled guilty to the misuse of classified information. So it would be awfully ironic if Trump picked Petraeus as Secretary of State, given that he gave Hillary Clinton, who was the Secretary of State, a lot of crap for the misuse of classified information. So we will just see how big of a hypocrite Donald Trump really is. Another possible pick for Secretary of State under a Trump presidency is Mitt Romney, and you guys all know who he is, and I don't even feel the need to address him. But while we're on the subject of the CIA, Trump has picked to head the CIA Mike Pompeo, who is known for introducing the legislation that is referred to as the DARK Act, which would prohibit states from mandating GMO labeling on their food, and instead would replace those labels with a very confusing and not very noticeable federal label. And Mike Pompeo has also been very supportive of the surveillance state, to say the least, and has said that Snowden deserves the death penalty. And then there are two people on Trump's transition team who could possibly be the next Secretary of State, who are bad news to say the least. The first is Rudy Giuliani, who is actually the mayor of New York during the 9/11 attacks. He's a neoconservative, a war hawk, and he's actually a 9/11 criminal. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to leave a link in the description below to a video by James Corbett where he explains it all. And the second person is John Bolton, who was not only a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, but a member of the neoconservative think tank, the Project for a New American Century. He supports war with Iran. He is also a supporter of the Iraq War and was pro-intervention in Libya, and we all know how that ended. And John Bolton is not the only PNAC member who is very likely going to be in Trump's cabinet, but so is James Woolsey. As I stated, he was a member of the Project for a New American Century, but he is also the former CIA director. Not only has he supported wars such as the war in Iraq, which Trump claims he never supported, but he was also very critical of whistleblowers and even said that Snowden should not merely be executed, but should be hung by the neck. And then we can't forget about Trump's pick for VP Mike Pence. Mike Pence not only voted in favor of the Iraq war, but he's also been, let's just say, open to the idea of military intervention in Syria, and he has also said that Dick Cheney is a role model of his. And I can keep listing members of the establishment Donald Trump surrounds himself with. I can keep talking about anti-freedom ideas that Donald Trump holds, such as that we should arrest people and put them in prison for a year if they burn the American flag or revoke their citizenship, or that we should bomb the family members of ISIS. But you guys know what it is that I'm getting at, and that is that Donald Trump is not who he says he is. He's not anti-establishment, he's not pro-freedom, and he has no plans to make America great again. Donald Trump is just another politician saying what the American public wants to hear, so that way they will elect him into office, so that way once he gets there he can do the exact opposite of what he promised to do. Just like Henry Kissinger said, don't expect Donald Trump to live up to any of his campaign promises. He just ran a smart campaign. And while I find it upsetting that the American public has been deceived, I almost find myself more upset that the alternative media has been conned into supporting Trump. And not everyone in the alternative media, but a whole lot have. And I find it so upsetting because the alternative media used to be so good about pointing out that the two-party system is two sides of the same coin. And they wanted to get rid of the duopoly that has ruined the United States of America. But instead, they have been taken in to Trump's rhetoric, and now they see it as there is a legitimate difference between the left and the right, and there is not. Both sides are operated by the same puppet master. Both are being controlled by the same groups, by the same think tanks, by the same secret societies. And I find it so incredibly upsetting that this has happened to the alternative media. But I think it's important that everyone realizes that any real solutions are not inside the political system. All the real solutions lie outside of the political system. No president is going to change the United States for the better. They're not going to upend the system. The elite has too much riding on this game to let someone like a Donald Trump come into office and to change everything and to shake things up. It's not going to happen. The last guy who tried to do that got a convertible trip to Dallas. And so it's important to realize that it doesn't matter what ruler gets into office. We shouldn't be focusing on what ruler we get. We should be focused on getting rid of rulers. We shouldn't be focusing on who controls the system, but we should focus on getting rid of the system. So I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think what I had to say was awesome and you really appreciated it. If you disagree, please let me know what you think. No matter what it is, I want to hear it. I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say. But for now, that's all I have got to say. I'm Luke Marshall, the Anarchist Crackpot. I'll see you guys soon.